Hello, and welcome to the Midnight Archive. It is just before dawn on the open sea. The water around you is dark, almost black, except where the first pale light of morning touches the crests of the waves. You can feel the rise and fall of the ship beneath you, the long rhythmic roll that has become as familiar as your own breathing. The air is cold and wet, heavy with salt spray. Your hands are numb where they grip the oar shaft, and your back aches from the hours of rowing through the night. Around you, your companions move in the same steady rhythm, pulling on their oars in near silence, their breath visible in the grey light. This is the moment you have been waiting for. Somewhere ahead, hidden in the pre-dawn darkness, lies the coast of a foreign land. You are a Viking raider, and you are about to strike. This is not a story of myth or legend. This is the lived experience of thousands of men who left the fjords and forests of Scandinavia between the 8th and 11th centuries to seek fortune, glory, and survival on the hostile waters of the North Atlantic. You are one of them. You are not a monster from a saga. You are a man, perhaps no older than 25, driven by necessity and ambition, fear and hope. You have left behind a small farm, a wife, children who may never see you again. You row toward violence, toward wealth, toward a fate you cannot control. Before we drift off, I am always curious to know where my listeners are tuning in from, and what time it is that they are listening tonight. Let me know in the comments. Now let the noise of the modern world fade away, settle into the darkness and the cold. Let us travel back across the centuries to a time when the sea was a highway, when distant shores promised riches beyond imagining, and when your survival depended on the strength of your arm and the favor of the gods. This is what it was like to be a Viking raider in the North Atlantic. The world you come from is one of harsh beauty and constant struggle. You were born in a valley deep in the mountains of Norway, where steep cliffs rise on either side of a narrow fjord. The water there is dark and cold, fed by glacial streams that cascade down from the high peaks. In summer the sun barely sets, and the land comes alive with brief, intense growth. Wild grasses grow tall, and the forests of pine and birch provide timber for building and fuel for fires. But summer is short. By autumn, the light begins to fade, and the long darkness of winter settles over the land like a heavy cloak. The fjord freezes at its edges. Snow covers the fields. For months your family huddles around the central hearth in your longhouse, eating salted fish and dried meat, waiting for the world to come alive again. This is a land that does not give easily. The soil is thin and rocky, difficult to farm. The growing season is too short for many crops. Your father and his father before him worked the same small plot of land, raising barley and oats, keeping a few cows and sheep. It is a hard life, but it is the only life your family has ever known. You are the second son. By the laws of your people, the farm will go to your older brother when your father dies. You will inherit nothing. This is the way it has always been. A farm cannot be divided endlessly among sons, or it will become too small to sustain anyone. So you must find your own fortune. You must make your own name, and the only path open to you, the only path that promises wealth and glory, is the path across the sea. You are not alone in this. Throughout Scandinavia, in Norway, Denmark, and Sweden, thousands of young men face the same choice. Some will stay and work their brothers' farms as laborers. Some will try to clear new land from the forest, but many, perhaps most, will take to the sea. This is the driving force behind the great movement that historians will one day call the Viking Age. It is not a sudden explosion of violence. It is the slow, steady pressure of too many people on too little land, of younger sons with no inheritance, of warriors with no wars to fight, of men who see the wealth of the Christian lands to the south and west and know that they can take it. Your people have always been seafarers. For generations, they have built ships and sailed the coastal waters, trading amber and furs for grain and iron. But something has changed in recent decades. The ships have grown longer, faster, more seaworthy. The voyages have grown longer too, reaching out into the open ocean, far from the sight of land, and the men who sail these ships have discovered that the Christian kingdoms of England, Francia, and Ireland are rich beyond belief. Their churches and monasteries are filled with gold, silver, and precious stones. Their towns and villages are undefended, and their people, raised in a religion that preaches peace and forgiveness, are unprepared for the sudden, brutal violence that you and your kind can bring. In your world, there is no shame in this. To be a warrior is to be honored. To raid and plunder is not a crime but a calling, a way of proving your courage and earning your place in the afterlife. The gods themselves were warriors. Odin, the All-Father, is the god of battle and wisdom, a one-eyed wanderer who seeks knowledge and glory. Thor, the thunder god, is the protector of men, wielding his great hammer against the giants who threaten the world. The stories you heard as a child are filled with heroes who took what they wanted by strength and cunning, who fought impossible odds, who died with weapons in their hands and were carried to Valhalla by the Valkyries. This is the life you aspire to. This is the fate you seek. But there is more to it than glory. There is also fear. You have seen men return from raids with terrible wounds, their bodies broken, their minds haunted. You have seen ships fail to return at all, lost to storms or enemy spears. You know that the sea is cruel and that death can come suddenly, without warning or mercy. Yet still you go. You go because staying means a life of poverty and obscurity. You go because the alternative is to be nothing, to leave no mark on the world, to be forgotten as soon as you are buried. And so when the call comes in early spring, when the ice has melted from the fjords and the winds blow fair from the north, you join the crew of a longship and set out across the North Sea toward the unknown. The ship is the key to everything. Without it, none of this would be possible. The longship is a masterpiece of engineering, a vessel unlike anything else in the world at this time. It is long and narrow, sleek and deadly, built for speed and flexibility. The hull is clinker-built, meaning that each plank overlaps the one below it, fastened with iron rivets. This creates a hull that is both strong and flexible, able to bend and twist with the movement of the waves without breaking apart. The keel is cut from a single massive oak tree, straight and true, the spine of the ship. The planking curves up from the keel in a smooth, elegant line, rising to a high prow and stern, often carved with the head of a dragon or serpent, to strike fear into the hearts of your enemies. Your ship is smaller than the great warships of kings and jarls, but it is still an impressive vessel. It is perhaps 60 feet long and 15 feet wide, with space for 30 oars, 15 on each side. It can carry a crew of 40 men, along with weapons, supplies, and whatever plunder you manage to take. The ship sits low in the water, drawing only 3 feet when fully loaded. This is crucial. It means you can navigate shallow rivers and estuaries, beaching the ship on open coastlines where larger vessels cannot go. You can strike deep inland, far from the sea, where no one expects you. The deck is open, with no cabin or shelter of any kind. Everything happens in the open air, exposed to sun, rain, wind, and spray. Along the sides of the ship, shields are hung in overlapping rows, painted in bright colors, red and yellow and black, both for protection and display. The mast is tall, made from a single pine trunk, stepped in a massive block of wood that can be lowered when needed. The sail, when raised, is a great square of wool, woven by the women of your village, and treated with animal fat to make it water-resistant. It is striped in red and white, visible for miles across the water. When the wind is fair, the sail allows you to cover vast distances without rowing, the ship skimming over the waves with terrifying speed. But the wind is not always fair. Often you must row, and rowing a longship is brutal work. You sit on a sea chest, a small wooden box that holds everything you own, a change of clothes, a whetstone for sharpening your weapons, a small wooden bowl and spoon, perhaps a carving, or a piece of jewelry given to you by your wife or mother for luck. The chest doubles as your seat. You pull your oar in rhythm with the men around you, 30 men moving as one, the oars dipping into the water and pulling back in a steady, endless cadence. The oar shaft is thick and smooth, worn by the hands of countless rowers before you. After a few hours, your palms begin to blister. After a few days, the blisters burst and bleed, and then harden into calluses. Your back aches, your shoulders burn, but you do not stop. To stop is to fail your companions, to mark yourself as weak, so you pull, and you endure. The smell of the ship is something you never get used to. It is a mixture of tar and salt, sweat and wet wool, the sour reek of men who have not bathed in weeks. The bilge water at the bottom of the hull, despite constant bailing, always holds a few inches of stinking seawater mixed with vomit and urine. In rough seas, when the ship pitches and rolls, this foul liquid sloshes back and forth, adding to the misery. You eat cold food, dried fish and hard bread, because there is no way to light a fire on a wooden ship at sea. You drink ale or water from skins that quickly grow stale. You sleep when you can, curled up on the deck in a cloak of oiled wool, trying to find shelter from the wind behind the curve of the hull or the bulk of other men. Privacy does not exist. Everything you do, from eating to relieving yourself over the side of the ship, is done in full view of your companions. Yet despite the hardship, there is a strange beauty to life on the open sea. At night, when the sky is clear, the stars appear in uncountable thousands, bright and cold and impossibly distant. You learn to navigate by them, by the North Star that never moves, by the arc of constellations across the dome of heaven. During the day, when the sun is out, the water can be a brilliant, impossible blue, stretching to the horizon in every direction. Dolphins sometimes swim alongside the ship, leaping and playing in the bow wave. Whales surface nearby, their great bodies rising from the deep, exhaling in tremendous spouts of mist before sliding back beneath the surface. These are moments of wonder, reminders that the world is vast and full of marvels, that you are part of something larger than yourself. But the sea is also a place of terror. Storms come suddenly, turning the water dark and wild, the waves rising into great walls of green water that crash over the ship, threatening to swamp it. The wind howls, tearing at the sail, forcing you to lower it and row desperately just to keep the ship pointed into the waves. Men are washed overboard, their screams lost in the roar of wind and water. You bail frantically, scooping water from the bilge with wooden buckets, knowing that if you fall behind, the ship will sink and you will all drown, dragged down by the weight of your weapons and armor into the cold black depths. In these moments, you pray to Thor and Jord, the gods of storm and sea, offering them whatever you can, promising sacrifices if they will only let you live. Sometimes the storm passes, sometimes it does not. The sea is full of the bones of ships and the ghosts of men who thought they were strong enough to master it. Your ship has a name. You call it Wave Steed or Sea Eagle or Dragon's Breath. The ship is not just a tool. It is a living thing, a companion, a source of pride. You and your crew built it yourselves, or bought shares in it, pooling your resources to pay for the timber and iron, the wool and tar, the labor of the shipwrights. Everyone on board has a stake in its success. If the raid is successful, you will all share in the plunder. If it fails, you will all share in the loss, perhaps even in death. This creates a bond among the crew, a sense of collective purpose that transcends individual ambition. You are not just raiders, you are a fellowship, bound by oaths and shared danger. Navigation is part science, part intuition, part divine favor. You do not have maps or compasses in the way that later ages will understand them. Instead, you navigate by the sun, by the stars, by the color and temperature of the water, by the flight of birds and the presence of driftwood. You carry a sunstone, a piece of crystal that can help you find the position of the sun even through cloud cover by polarizing light. You know that certain depths of water have certain colors, that currents run in predictable patterns, that land birds do not fly more than a day's journey from shore. Your helmsman is an older man, a veteran of many voyages, who has learned these secrets through years of experience. He stands at the stern, one hand on the steering oar, reading the sea as another man might read a book. You trust him with your life, because without him, you would be lost, drifting in the emptiness, waiting for thirst or madness to take you. After days at sea, you finally sight land. It appears first as a smudge on the horizon, a faint line of gray or green that might be cloud or might be coast. The helmsman adjusts course, steering toward it. Gradually, it resolves into detail. Cliffs and headlands, beaches and river mouths, the green of fields and forests. This is the coast of Northumbria, or perhaps East Anglia, or maybe the shores of Francia. You do not know the names these people use. You know only that this is a rich land, full of easy prey. The ship slows. The crew stops rowing and sits in silence, watching the shore, looking for signs of habitation, for villages or monasteries, for places where wealth might be found. Your target has been chosen in advance, based on intelligence gathered from previous raids or from traders who have traveled these waters. You are looking for a monastery. This is no accident. Monasteries are ideal targets for raiders like you. They are usually located on the coast or along rivers, easy to reach by ship. They are undefended, or nearly so, because the Christian monks believe that their faith will protect them, and they are filled with treasures. Gold and silver chalices, reliquaries encrusted with jewels, illuminated manuscripts bound in precious metals, stores of wine and grain. The monks are also valuable. They can be taken as slaves or ransomed back to their communities for additional profit. From your perspective, monasteries are almost too good to be true, gifts from the gods to those brave enough to take them. You wait until nightfall, anchoring the ship in a sheltered cove or beaching it on a secluded stretch of sand. No fires are lit, no voices are raised above a whisper. You eat a cold meal and try to rest, knowing that the raid will come at dawn. Around you, other men check their weapons, testing the edges of axes and swords, tightening the leather straps on shields, murmuring prayers to Odin and Thor. Some men are excited, eager for battle, for the chance to prove themselves. Others are quiet, withdrawn, lost in their own thoughts. You feel both fear and anticipation, a tightness in your chest, a sharpness in your senses. You have done this before, but it never becomes routine. Every raid is different. Every raid could be your last. Your weapons are simple but effective. Most men carry a broad-bladed axe, the bearded axe, with a long wooden handle that allows you to strike with tremendous force. The axe is the weapon of farmers and warriors alike, practical and deadly. Some men also carry a sword, a straight double-edged blade about 30 inches long, if they are wealthy enough to afford one. Swords are expensive, often passed down through families, given names and histories of their own. Your sword, if you have one, is a symbol of your status, a mark of honor. You also carry a spear, with a leaf-shaped iron head on a wooden shaft, and a round wooden shield, about 3 feet across, covered in leather and painted with your personal design. The center of the shield is reinforced with an iron boss, which can be used to punch an opponent in close combat. If you are fortunate, or wealthy, you also wear armor. The best armor is a mail shirt, a byrnie, made from thousands of interlocking iron rings, laboriously riveted together by skilled smiths. A mail shirt is almost impossibly expensive, worth the price of several farms. It is heavy, perhaps 30 pounds, and it offers excellent protection against cuts and slashes, though it does little against the crushing impact of a heavy blow. Most men cannot afford mail. Instead, they wear thick leather jerkins, or padded cloth tunics, which provide some protection but are far inferior to iron. Your helmet, if you have one, is a simple bowl of iron or leather, sometimes with a nose guard to protect your face. The popular image of the horned Viking helmet is a myth, a creation of later artists. No warrior would wear horns into battle. They would only give an enemy something to grab. As the first light of dawn breaks, you prepare to move. The ship is pushed back into the water. Oars are readied, and you row silently toward the shore. The monastery sits on a low headland, its stone church and wooden buildings visible against the grey sky. You can hear the sound of bells, the monks calling each other to morning prayers. They have no idea you are here. The ship glides through the shallow water, and then the keel scrapes against sand. You are ashore. What happens next is fast and brutal. You leap from the ship into the cold surf, shield on your arm, axe in hand, and run up the beach. Around you, your companions do the same, spreading out in a loose line, moving quickly toward the monastery. There is no battle cry, no warning, you simply attack. The first people you see are monks, old men in rough brown robes, emerging from the church. They freeze when they see you, their faces blank with incomprehension. Then they turn and try to run.
You catch them easily.
Your axe swings down. It is over in seconds. There is blood on the ground, on your hands, on the blade of your weapon. You feel nothing. There is no time to feel. You are inside the rhythm of violence now, moving on instinct, on training, on the terrible efficiency that comes from knowing exactly what you are here to do. You enter the church. Inside it is dim and cool, lit by candles that flicker on a stone altar. The air smells of incense and old wood. The walls are covered with carvings, with painted images of their god and his saints. You do not understand these things, and you do not care. You are here for one purpose. You move to the altar and tear down the golden candlesticks, the silver chalice, the jeweled cross. You pry loose the precious stones set into the reliquaries. You take everything that is valuable, stuffing it into a sack you carry for this purpose. Other men are doing the same, moving through the monastery like a wave, stripping it of everything worth taking. Not all the monks are killed immediately. Some are rounded up, their hands bound, forced to kneel in the dirt outside. These are the ones you will take as slaves. They will be sold in the markets of Dublin or Hedeby, or kept as laborers on farms back home. They stare at you with wide, terrified eyes, and you stare back, seeing them not as people but as goods, as commodities. This is the logic of your world. Strength takes from weakness. The strong survive. The weak are subjugated or destroyed. It is the way of things. The raid lasts perhaps an hour, maybe less. You move with speed and purpose, taking what you can carry, destroying what you cannot. Manuscripts are torn apart for their jeweled covers, the parchment pages scattered to the wind. Buildings are set on fire, the smoke rising black and thick into the morning sky. And then, as quickly as you came, you are gone. You return to the ship, dragging your plunder and your captives, pushing the vessel back into the water, rowing hard away from the shore. Behind you the monastery burns. Ahead of you is the open sea and the long voyage home. But you do not go home immediately. This is only the first raid of the season. You have the rest of the summer ahead of you, and there are many more targets along this coast. You find a secluded island or a hidden bay, a place where you can camp in relative safety, and you settle in to wait. The ship is pulled up onto the beach, propped on logs to keep it stable. Tents are erected, simple shelters of sailcloth and wood. Fires are lit, and for the first time in days you eat a hot meal. Fish caught from the sea, meat from sheep stolen during the raid, bread baked on flat stones. The warmth of the fire, the taste of hot food, the relief of solid ground beneath your feet. These are small comforts, but they are enough. Life in the camp falls into a routine. During the day, men work on the ship, caulking leaks, replacing broken oars, repairing damage to the hull. Others stand watch, scanning the horizon for enemy ships or local forces coming to retaliate. Weapons are sharpened, armor is cleaned and oiled. The plunder is sorted and divided according to the agreements made before the voyage. Every man receives a share, calculated based on his contribution. The captain and helmsman receive more. Ordinary crew members receive less, but everyone gets something. This is part of the code that holds the crew together. No one man can claim all the wealth. It must be shared, or the fellowship will dissolve into jealousy and violence. In the evenings, when the work is done and the watch is set, the men gather around the fire. This is when the real life of the camp emerges. Stories are told, tales of past raids, of great warriors and legendary battles, of the gods and their exploits. You listen to older men recount their adventures, and you add your own embellishing where necessary, because reputation is everything. A man who cannot tell a good story, who cannot hold the attention of his companions, is diminished in their eyes. Some men play Hinafata, a board game of strategy, moving carved wooden pieces across a grid, trying to capture the opponent's king. Others carve working bone or wood into small figures, into tools, into decorations for weapons. And some simply sit in silence, staring into the flames, thinking of home, of the families they left behind, of the uncertain fate that awaits them. Tensions arise. In such close quarters, with men from different villages, different families, different social standings, conflict is inevitable. A dispute over the division of plunder can turn into a shouting match, then a fistfight, then something worse. The captain must mediate, must keep order, must ensure that grievances do not tear the crew apart. Sometimes this requires force. A man who refuses to obey, who challenges the captain's authority, may be beaten or expelled from the crew, left behind on a foreign shore to fend for himself. This is the harsh reality of Viking society. Loyalty and obedience are paramount. Disobedience is not tolerated. The captives, if you have taken any, are kept under guard, bound at the wrists, huddled together in fear. They do not speak your language, and you do not speak theirs. Communication happens through gestures, through violence. They are fed enough to keep them alive, but little more. Some of them try to escape. These are usually caught and punished, sometimes killed as an example to the others. You do not think much about their suffering. They are the enemy, or at least, they are not your people. Their fate is unfortunate, but it is not your concern. You are here to survive, to enrich yourself, to earn glory. Their lives are simply the price of that ambition. As the days pass, the crew scouts for new targets. Small groups of men take the ship and row along the coast, searching for undefended settlements, for churches, for any sign of wealth. Intelligence is gathered from captives, who can be made to talk through threats or bribes. You learn the names of nearby towns. the locations of monasteries, the movements of local lords and their retinues. This information is crucial. A well-planned raid is far more likely to succeed than a reckless gamble. And so you wait, and you watch, and you plan. When the next target is chosen, the process begins again. The ship is launched at nightfall, rowing through the darkness, arriving at dawn. The attack is swift and overwhelming. Plunder is taken, captives are seized, and you retreat before any organized resistance can be mounted. This is the pattern of your summer. Raid, retreat, rest, repeat. Each raid adds to your wealth. Each success adds to your reputation. But each raid also adds to your exhaustion, your injuries, your sense of vulnerability. The local populations are not passive. They are learning to defend themselves, building watchtowers, organizing militias, fortifying their settlements. The easy days of undefended monasteries are beginning to end. The tactics you employ have been refined through years of experience, passed down from older raiders to younger ones, adapted to circumstances, and learned through trial and error. The element of surprise is paramount. You strike at dawn whenever possible, when people are least alert, when the transition from sleep to waking leaves them confused and slow to react. The approach is made in darkness or in the pre-dawn grey, the ship moving silently through the water, oars dipping and rising with barely a splash. Sometimes you beach the ship, sometimes you anchor in shallows and wade ashore. The choice depends on the terrain, on how quickly you might need to retreat, on whether there are obstacles or defenses to overcome. The initial assault is designed to create maximum chaos and terror. You do not advance in formation or follow complex battle plans. You simply run, screaming, weapons raised, your appearance alone often enough to scatter resistance. The psychological impact of 30 or 40 armed men appearing suddenly out of the morning mist, their faces fierce, their weapons bright, cannot be overstated. Most of the people you encounter have never experienced violence on this scale. They are farmers, fishermen, craftsmen, monks. They are not warriors. The sight and sound of your attack triggers panic, and panic is your greatest ally. People flee in all directions, abandoning possessions, thinking only of escape. This allows you to take what you want with minimal resistance. But not all raids go smoothly. Sometimes there are men willing to fight, retainers of a local lord, or simply brave individuals who stand their ground. When resistance is met, the violence becomes personal and brutal. You swing your axe, feeling it bite into flesh and bone, seeing blood spray, hearing screams. The individual moments of combat are chaotic, almost dreamlike in their intensity. There is no time to think, only to react. You move by instinct, by training, by the muscle memory built through practice and previous fights. You block a spear thrust with your shield, feeling the impact jar your arm. You counter with your axe, the blade sinking deep. The man falls, and you move on, looking for the next threat. The worst moments are not the fighting itself, but what comes after, when the immediate danger has passed and you see what you have done. Bodies lie on the ground, some dead, some dying, some crying out for help. You have learned to harden yourself to these sights, to tell yourself that this is simply the way of the world, that these people would do the same to you if positions were reversed. But the justifications feel hollow sometimes, especially when you see a child standing over a dead parent, when you see the terror in a woman's eyes as she realizes what is about to happen. These are moments that stay with you, that return in dreams, that make you question who you are and what you have become. The taking of captives is a calculated decision. Strong, healthy individuals, particularly young men and women, are valuable as slaves. They can be sold in the markets of Dublin or Hedeby, or kept to work on farms back home. Children too are sometimes taken, though they are more trouble than adults, more likely to try to escape, harder to control. The elderly and the infirm are generally left behind. They have little value as slaves, and cannot endure the voyage. This cold economic calculation is disturbing when you think about it too directly, so you try not to think about it. You tell yourself you are simply following the customs of your people, that slavery has always existed, that these captives are fortunate to have their lives spared. The captives are bound with leather thongs or rope, their hands tied in front or behind their backs depending on how cooperative they seem. They are herded back to the ship, prodded along with spear butts if they move too slowly. Some weep, some are silent, some plead in their foreign tongue. You understand none of their words, but you understand their meaning. They are begging for mercy, for release, for their lives. You ignore them. To show weakness, to show compassion, would undermine your authority and could encourage resistance. The captives must understand from the beginning that their situation is hopeless, that their only choice is obedience or death. Once aboard the ship, the captives are kept under constant watch. They sit in the bottom of the hull, exposed to sun and spray, given minimal food and water. Seasickness affects them badly, and the bilge fills with vomit. The smell becomes overpowering. Some crew members complain, but there is nothing to be done. The captives must be transported, and the ship has no facilities for their comfort. A few try to escape during stops ashore, slipping away in the confusion. Most are caught. The punishment is usually severe, a beating or worse, meant to discourage others from attempting the same. One or two might be killed as examples, their bodies left on the beach as warnings. This brutality is necessary, you tell yourself. If the captives believed they could escape with impunity, they would all try, and chaos would result. The division of plunder follows a strict protocol, established before the voyage began and adhered to rigidly to avoid disputes. The system is based on shares. The captain receives the largest share, usually 2 or 3 times what an ordinary crew member receives, in recognition of his leadership and his responsibility for the ship. The helmsman receives a larger share as well, reflecting his crucial role. Ordinary rowers receive 1 share each. Men who distinguished themselves in combat, who showed particular bravery or killed notable enemies, might receive bonus shares. The plunder is laid out on the beach or the ship's deck, sorted by type: silver coins, golden objects, jewelry, fine cloth, weapons, tools. Each category is appraised by the captain and senior crew members, its value estimated, and then divided proportionally according to the agreed-upon shares. This system works because it is transparent and fair, at least by the standards of your society. Every man knows in advance what he can expect. The captain cannot simply take what he wants without consequences. If he is seen as greedy or unjust in the division, crew members will refuse to sail with him in future seasons, and his reputation will suffer. The threat of losing his crew keeps the captain honest. Similarly, crew members cannot demand more than their share without being seen as troublemakers, destabilizing the fellowship. The system relies on mutual self-interest and the understanding that cooperation benefits everyone more than conflict. Disagreements still arise, of course. A man might feel that his contribution was undervalued, that he deserved a bonus share but did not receive one. Another might believe that a particular item was underappraised, that it is worth more than the captain assigned to it. These disputes are usually settled through discussion, with senior crew members mediating. If a resolution cannot be reached, the matter might be put to a vote, with the majority deciding. In extreme cases, a man who feels aggrieved might choose to leave the crew, taking his share and parting ways. This is rare because leaving means giving up the security and fellowship of the crew, but it happens. A man's honor sometimes demands that he stand up for what he believes is right, even if it costs him. The silver coins that make up a large portion of the plunder come from all over the known world. Some are Anglo-Saxon pennies, minted in the kingdoms of England, stamped with the image of a king and crude letters that you cannot read. Others are Frankish deniers, the currency of the Carolingian Empire. Still others are Islamic dirhams, coins from the caliphates of the Middle East and Central Asia, marked with Arabic script. These dirhams are particularly prized because they are made of high-quality silver and are widely accepted in trade. The presence of so many different types of coins in a single hoard speaks to the international nature of Viking raiding and trading, the way your people connect distant regions through their voyages. Not all the silver is in coin form. Much of it is hack silver, pieces of jewelry, ingots, or even coins that have been cut into fragments. This is because, in your economic system, silver is valued by weight, not by denomination. A coin is worth only the silver it contains, so if you need to make a small payment, you simply cut a piece off a larger object. This requires that you carry a small scale and a set of weights, which most serious traders and warriors do. When making a transaction, the silver is weighed carefully, ensuring that both parties agree on the value being exchanged. This system is practical and flexible, though it results in a constant fragmentation of objects, beautiful jewelry destroyed for the sake of commerce. Gold is rarer, and even more valuable than silver. When you find golden objects, they're typically religious items: chalices, reliquaries, crosses, book covers. These objects are often decorated with precious stones, which are pried out and kept separately. The gold itself might be melted down and recast into arm rings or neck rings, wearable forms of wealth that also serve as displays of status. A man wearing a thick gold arm ring is immediately recognizable as wealthy and successful. These rings are given as gifts by leaders to their followers, tokens of favor and symbols of the bond between lord and warrior. To receive such a ring is an honor, and to lose it is a shame. Some men are even known by their rings: ring breaker, gold giver, names that reflect their generosity or their wealth. The changing nature of the defenses you encounter tells the story of adaptation and response. In the early years of Viking raiding, the element of surprise was almost total. No one expected attacks from the sea. Monasteries were built in exposed coastal locations precisely because they seemed safe, remote places of peace and contemplation. But after the first devastating raids, the survivors began to understand the threat. Watchtowers were erected on headlands and cliffs, manned by men whose sole job was to scan the horizon for the distinctive square sails of Norse ships. When a sail was spotted, a signal fire would be lit, and the alarm would spread inland. This gave communities time to gather their valuables, to hide them or carry them to fortified places, and to organize what defense they could muster. The Fyrd, the local militia system used in Anglo-Saxon England, was adapted to respond to Viking raids. Free men were required to serve when called, bringing their own weapons and gathering at designated muster points. These were not professional soldiers but farmers and tradesmen, yet they could be formidable in numbers, especially when fighting on familiar terrain. You have encountered the Fyrd on several occasions, and they forced you to retreat when your raiding party was outnumbered. The key to successful raiding became not just striking quickly, but also knowing when to withdraw, when the risk of staying outweighed the potential reward. Some monasteries and villages began to fortify themselves, building walls of earth and timber, digging ditches, creating defensible positions. Others simply abandoned their exposed locations, moving inland or to places that were easier to defend. A few churches even created small armed retinues, retaining warriors specifically to protect against raiders. This was a significant development, a departure from the Christian ideal of non-violence, but pragmatism won out over principle. The church had wealth, and that wealth needed protection. You noticed this evolution over the years, the gradual hardening of targets that had once been soft and vulnerable. Kings and lords began to pay tribute, buying peace rather than fighting for it. The Danegeld, as it came to be called in England, was a tax levied specifically to pay off Viking raiders. This was an admission of weakness, an acknowledgement that the kingdoms could not effectively defend all their coasts and all their people. But from the perspective of the rulers, it made economic sense. Paying tribute was cheaper than maintaining a large standing army, and it provided at least temporary security. For the raiders, the Danegeld was a windfall, silver handed over without the need for violence. Some crews became essentially professional extortionists, returning to the same regions year after year, threatening violence unless paid. This was less glorious than winning silver through combat, but it was safer and often more profitable. Yet tribute payments created their own problems. They marked certain kingdoms as wealthy but weak, encouraging even more raids. They also created internal resentment among the people forced to pay the taxes, undermining the authority of their rulers, and the payments rarely brought lasting peace. Vikings who received Danegeld one year might return the next, reasoning that if a kingdom could afford to pay once, it could afford to pay again. The spiral of violence and tribute accelerated, contributing to the destabilization of kingdoms and the eventual establishment of permanent Viking settlements and control. As you grow older and more experienced, you begin to see the raiding life with more nuance and complexity. You understand that what you are doing is not sustainable indefinitely. The easy targets are disappearing. The defenses are getting stronger. Other crews are competing for the same diminishing opportunities, leading to conflicts between Norse groups, ship fighting ship, kinsman against kinsman. Some of the most bitter battles you have fought were not against Saxons or Franks, but against other Vikings, disputes over territory or plunder that escalated into violence. These battles are particularly painful because the men you fight against are like you, speak your language, worship your gods. Killing them feels different, more like murder than war. You also begin to understand the economic logic of the entire enterprise. The wealth you bring back enriches your family and your village, but it does not create lasting prosperity. Silver can buy goods, but it cannot buy the things that truly matter. More farmland, better growing conditions, an end to the harsh winters. The fundamental problems that drove you to sea in the first place, overpopulation and scarce resources, are not solved by raiding. If anything, they are exacerbated, because the raiding lifestyle prevents young men from settling down, from establishing farms and families, from investing in the future. The Viking Age, you realize dimly, is a dead end, a temporary solution that delays rather than resolves the underlying issues. But what choice do you have? You were born into this world, these circumstances. You did not create the system that leaves younger sons with no inheritance. You did not create the harsh climate that makes farming so difficult. You are simply trying to survive, to carve out a life for yourself, using the tools and opportunities available to you. If that means violence, then so be it. You cannot change the world. You can only navigate it as best you can, trying to maintain your honor, to provide for your family, to leave some mark, however small, on the vast indifferent sweep of history. You carry wounds from previous raids, scars that ache in the cold and damp. A sword cut across your forearm, poorly stitched, has left a ragged line of scar tissue. Your left shoulder was dislocated in a fall from the ship and never set properly. It still clicks when you move it, and it grows stiff and painful in bad weather. You have lost a tooth to a punch during a drunken brawl with a crew member. These are the marks of your trade, the physical cost of a life spent in violence. You accept them without complaint, because to complain is to be weak, and weakness is death. But there are deeper wounds as well, wounds that do not show. You have killed men, not in the heat of battle where death is quick and almost impersonal, but up close, looking into their eyes, hearing them beg for mercy in words you do not understand. You have seen children orphaned, women widowed, homes destroyed. You tell yourself that this is the way of the world, that the strong take from the weak, that your gods approve of strength and courage. But in the quiet moments when you are alone with your thoughts, you wonder. You wonder if the gods are real. You wonder if there is truly glory in what you do, or if it is simply brutality dressed up in fine words. You wonder if the afterlife you have been promised, the great hall of Valhalla, where warriors feast and fight for eternity, is real, or if death is simply darkness and oblivion. These thoughts frighten you more than any enemy blade. Your world is shaped by a complex code of honor, a set of unwritten rules that govern behavior and define worth. This code is not gentle or forgiving. It is harsh and uncompromising, built for a world of scarcity and violence. At its core is the concept of reputation. Your reputation is your most valuable possession, more valuable than gold or land, because it determines how others see you, how they treat you, whether they trust you or fear you. A man with a good reputation can gather a crew, can lead raids, can command respect. A man with a bad reputation is shunned, isolated, unable to find allies or opportunities. Reputation is built through deeds, acts of courage, generosity, loyalty, and strength. It can be destroyed by cowardice, betrayal, greed, or weakness. Honor, in your culture, is not the same as kindness or compassion. It does not mean refraining from violence or protecting the innocent. Honor means fulfilling your obligations, keeping your oaths, avenging insults, and proving your worth in combat. If a man insults you, you must respond, or you are diminished. If a kinsman is killed, you must seek vengeance, or you are shamed. If you swear an oath, you must keep it, even if it costs you your life. These are the rules, and they are absolute. A man without honor is not a man at all. The gods watch over all of this, at least according to the beliefs you were raised with. Odin, the All-Father, is the god of wisdom, war, and death. He sacrificed his own eye to gain knowledge, hung himself from the world tree for 9 days to learn the secrets of the runes. He is a god of cunning and foresight, but also of cruelty and ambition. He gathers the souls of the bravest warriors to his hall, Valhalla, where they fight and feast until the end of the world. Thor, the thunder god, is more straightforward. He is the protector of mankind, the slayer of giants, the wielder of the hammer Mjolnir. He is a god of strength and honor, revered by farmers and warriors alike. Then there is Freyja, the goddess of love and fertility, and Loki, the trickster, and many others, each with their own domain, their own stories, their own demands. You do not worship these gods in the way that Christians worship their God. There are no churches, No priests in the Christian sense, no written scriptures. Instead, you honor the gods through sacrifices, through rituals performed at sacred sites, groves, and stone circles. You offer them animals, horses, and sometimes, in the most solemn and terrible ceremonies, human beings. These offerings are meant to gain their favor, to ensure good harvests, successful raids, protection in battle. You pray to Odin before a raid, asking for victory and courage. You pray to Thor during a storm, asking for safe passage. And you pray to Freyja when you think of home, of your wife, of the children you hope to see again. But underlying all of this is a darker belief, a concept called word, which is often translated as fate but is more complex than that. Word is the web of cause and effect, the pattern of events that is woven by the Norns, the three goddesses who sit at the base of the world tree and spin the threads of destiny. According to this belief, your life is not entirely your own. The moment and manner of your death have already been decided. You cannot escape your fate, no matter how clever or strong you are. This belief shapes your worldview in profound ways. It makes you fearless in battle, because if you are fated to die, then caution will not save you, and if you are not fated to die, then no enemy can kill you. But it also makes you fatalistic, resigned to the idea that the world is governed by forces beyond your control, that the gods play with human lives for their own amusement. There are men among the crew who embody this belief more than others. They are called berserkers, warriors who fight in a trance-like state of fury, heedless of pain or danger. Before battle, they work themselves into a frenzy, howling and biting their shields, until they are barely human, more beast than man. In combat, they charge forward without armor, without fear, cutting down enemies with reckless abandon. Some say they channel the spirit of Odin, that they are possessed by the god himself. Others say they are simply mad, driven insane by the violence of their lives. You have fought alongside berserkers, and you are both awed and terrified by them. They are incredibly effective in battle, breaking enemy formations, spreading panic, but they are also unstable, dangerous even to their own side. When the battle is over, they collapse, exhausted and disoriented, sometimes weeping like children. They are weapons, not men, and they are treated as such. You are not a berserker. You fight with discipline, with strategy, with the clear-headed pragmatism of a man who wants to survive. But you understand the appeal. There is a part of you that envies their abandon, their freedom from fear and doubt. You wonder what it would be like to let go completely, to surrender to rage and violence, to stop thinking and simply be. But you never do. You hold on to control, to reason, because you know that if you lose that, you lose yourself. Not all Vikings travel west as you have done. You have heard stories from other crews, tales of voyages to distant lands. Some sail south to the Mediterranean, returning with stories of sun-baked cities and strange treasures. Others travel east along great rivers, portaging their ships through forests and marshes, eventually reaching Constantinople, that legendary city of gold and silk. A few have even sailed west beyond Iceland, finding lands of ice and briefly glimpsing shores even further beyond, though these ventures are rare and often end in failure. The world of the Northmen extends in every direction, but your world is more immediate. The ship beneath your feet, the weight of your axe in your hand, the faces of your crew members. You are not consciously participating in a great historical movement. You are simply trying to survive, to gain wealth, to earn honor. As you sit in camp between raids, you sometimes engage in small crafts, carving bone or wood into gaming pieces or decorative objects. The work is meditative, a way to quiet your mind. Some men compose poetry, skaldic verse full of complex metaphors. A warrior who can craft a good poem about his exploits will have his name repeated in halls back home, a form of immortality, perhaps more reliable than Valhalla. The relationships you form with your crewmates are deep and complex. These are the men with whom you share everything: danger, hardship, plunder, silence. Some are kinsmen, others are oath brothers, men with whom you have sworn formal bonds as sacred as family ties. You would die for them, and they for you. This is not sentiment but practical necessity. Yet there are also tensions, rivalries, grudges that simmer beneath the surface. The close quarters and constant stress wear on everyone. The captain must constantly manage these conflicts, balancing different personalities and interests to keep the crew functioning as a unit. The women you left behind run the farms while you are away, managing households and raising children. Norse women have more autonomy than their counterparts in most other medieval societies. They can own property, divorce, and speak at assemblies. Your wife is managing your household, negotiating with neighbors, ensuring the harvest is brought in. She does not know if you are alive or dead. If you die far from home, she will mourn, but she will also remarry, because life is hard and widows cannot remain unmarried for long. This is the way of things. Sentiment is a luxury that people living on the edge of survival cannot always afford. The seasonal rhythm of raiding shapes the entire year. Spring is when crews assemble and ships launch. Summer is the raiding season. Autumn is when you return and plunder is divided. Winter is for rest and recovery. The cycle repeats year after year, until you are too old or too broken to continue, or until you die. As the summer wears on, the raids become more difficult. The local populations have learned to expect you. Watchtowers have been erected along the coast, manned by vigilant guards who light signal fires at the first sign of strange ships. The Fyrd, the local militia, has been organized, armed with spears and axes, ready to respond to raids. You encounter resistance more often now, and the resistance is fiercer, more organized. In one raid, you are ambushed as you return to the ship, caught in a narrow valley by a force of armed men. The fight is desperate and chaotic. Men fall on both sides, blood soaking into the earth. You manage to fight your way through, but not without losses. 3 of your companions are killed, their bodies left behind because there is no time to retrieve them. Their deaths weigh on you. They were your friends, your oath brothers, men you had fought beside for years. Now they are gone, and you do not even know if they will receive a proper burial, if their souls will find their way to the afterlife. The injuries accumulate. Men are wounded, some seriously. One man takes a spear through the thigh, the iron point tearing through muscle and scraping bone. The wound is cleaned with ale, stitched shut with thread made from animal gut, and wrapped in cloth, but it festers. Within days, the flesh around the wound turns red and swollen, hot to the touch. The man develops a fever, shaking and delirious. He dies after a week of agony, his body wrapped in sailcloth and consigned to the sea. There is no ceremony, no elaborate funeral. You simply push his body over the side and watch as it sinks beneath the waves. This is the reality of your life. Death is common, expected, unremarkable. Sickness is as much a threat as combat. Dysentery sweeps through the camp, leaving men weak and dehydrated, unable to fight or row. You drink from streams and rivers, never knowing if the water is safe, if it carries disease. You eat food that is often spoiled, salt pork and dried fish that have been stored for months in the damp hold of the ship. Infections spread easily in the close quarters, passed from man to man through coughs and shared cups. There is no real medicine, no understanding of how disease works. Wounds are cleaned with water or ale, stitched shut and left to heal or not. If a wound does not heal, if infection sets in, there is little to be done. Sometimes, limbs are amputated, the flesh cut away with a knife, the bone sawed through, the stump cauterized with a hot iron. The screams of men undergoing such procedures haunt the camp. Many do not survive. Those who do are crippled, unable to fight, their raiding days over. Despite all of this, you continue. You continue because stopping means failure, means returning home with nothing, means facing the judgment of your family and community. You continue because your companions depend on you and you depend on them. You continue because the alternative, turning back, admitting defeat, is unthinkable. And so you endure the pain, the fear, the exhaustion. You endure because that is what warriors do. By late summer, the ship's hold is filled with plunder, sacks of silver coins, golden chalices and crosses, bolts of fine cloth, barrels of wine. The wealth you have accumulated is substantial, more than you could have earned in a lifetime of farming, but it has come at a cost. The crew is depleted, reduced by death and injury. Ship itself is showing signs of wear, the hull leaking in places, the sail torn and patched. The season is drawing to a close. The weather is beginning to turn, the winds shifting, the seas growing rougher. It is time to go home. The voyage back across the North Sea is even more dangerous than the journey out. You are heavily laden, the ship riding low in the water, less responsive to the oars and the sail. Storms are more frequent now. The autumn gales sweeping down from the Arctic, turning the sea into a maelstrom. You row for days, soaked to the skin, cold and exhausted, the ship pitching and rolling, the waves breaking over the gunwales. At one point, the mast cracks, splitting halfway up, and you must lower it before it falls and destroys the ship. You continue under oar alone, the progress agonizingly slow. Men pray openly now, no longer ashamed to show their fear, begging the gods for deliverance. And then finally you see it. The coastline of Norway, the familiar shapes of mountains and fjords rising from the sea. Relief washes over you so intense it is almost painful. You have survived. You are home. The ship glides into the calm waters of the fjord, past the headlands and islands, toward the small cluster of buildings that is your village. People gather on the shore, waving, shouting. You can see your wife, your children, running down to the water's edge. You step from the ship onto solid ground, and your legs almost buckle beneath you. It has been months since you stood on land that did not move, and your body has forgotten what stability feels like. The homecoming is a mixture of joy and sorrow. The successful raid is celebrated, the plunder displayed, the wealth distributed. You are richer now than you have ever been, able to buy livestock, tools, perhaps even a small piece of land. Your reputation has grown. People speak your name with respect, with admiration. You have proven yourself. But there is also grief. Not everyone has returned. The families of the men who died mourn their losses, weeping and wailing, their cries echoing through the village. You attend the funeral feasts, drinking to the memory of the fallen, recounting their deeds, promising that they will not be forgotten. But you know that they will be. Eventually, memory is fragile. In a generation or two, their names will be lost, their stories faded into myth. You try to return to the rhythms of ordinary life. You work your brother's farm, plowing fields, tending animals, repairing fences. But it is difficult. The farm feels small, confining, after the vastness of the sea. The work feels tedious, meaningless, after the intensity of combat. You are restless, haunted by dreams of violence, of drowning, of men screaming. Your wife notices the change in you. She tries to comfort you, but you cannot explain what you have seen, what you have done. She does not understand, and you do not want her to. You want to protect her from the darkness you carry inside. As winter closes in, you sit by the fire in your longhouse, listening to the wind howl outside, and you think about the coming spring. You think about the ship, pulled up on the shore, waiting. You think about the sea, the raids, the wealth, and the danger, and you know that you will go again. You will go because you cannot stay, because the life of a farmer is not enough, because you have tasted something that has changed you forever. You are a Viking raider, and this is your fate. You will sail the North Sea until you die, and when you die you hope it will be with a weapon in your hand, so that the Valkyries will carry you to Valhalla, where you will feast and fight in the Hall of Heroes until the end of the world. The winter months in your longhouse are a time of enforced intimacy and slow-burning tension. The structure itself is long and low, built of timber with a turf roof that provides insulation against the cold. Inside, the space is divided by wooden posts that support the roof beams, creating a central hall with smaller alcoves along the sides for sleeping and storage. The heart of the longhouse is the central hearth, a long fire pit running down the middle of the hall filled with burning wood that provides heat and light. Smoke rises toward the roof, escaping through gaps in the thatch, but much of it lingers, filling the space with a perpetual haze that stings your eyes and coats everything in a thin layer of soot. The household gathers around this fire on the long winter nights. Your wife sits with the other women, spinning wool into thread, the steady rhythm of the spindle whirl a constant background sound. The wool comes from your own sheep, sheared in the spring, washed and carded through the summer, now being transformed into the thread that will be woven into cloth. The women work by the firelight, their hands moving automatically, their conversation flowing around topics both mundane and profound. The health of the animals, the behavior of children, the reputation of neighbors, the stories of the gods. Children play near the fire or sleep in the alcoves, wrapped in furs against the cold that creeps in through every crack and gap in the walls. You sit with the other men, repairing tools, carving wood, playing board games. The game of Hanafataf is particularly popular during these long, dark months. It is played on a checkered board with carved wooden pieces. A game of strategy where one side tries to protect the king while the other tries to capture him. The games can last hours, with men watching and commenting, betting small amounts on the outcome. These games are more than mere entertainment. They teach strategy, foresight, the ability to think several moves ahead. They are training for the complexities of raid planning, for the tactical decisions that must be made in moments of crisis. A man who is good at Hanafatov is often good at reading situations, at anticipating what an opponent might do. The food you eat during winter is monotonous, but sustaining. The summer's harvest has been preserved in various ways to last through the months of cold. Barley and oats are stored in large wooden barrels, protected from moisture and vermin. Fish, caught in abundance during the warmer months, have been dried or smoked, hung from the rafters of the longhouse where they remain preserved by the smoke from the fire. Meat from slaughtered animals, those that could not be kept alive through winter, has been salted or smoked as well. Butter and cheese, made from summer milk, sit in earthenware pots. Root vegetables, stored in pits covered with earth and straw, provide some variety. The meals are filling, but lack the freshness and flavor of summer food. By late winter, everyone is hungry for green things, for fresh meat, for anything that is not dried or salted or smoked. The cold is relentless. Despite the fire, despite the thick walls and the turf roof, the chill seeps in. You sleep in an alcove along the side of the hall, on a platform raised slightly off the ground, covered with straw and furs. Your wife sleeps beside you, and often your youngest children as well, all of you huddled together for warmth. In the deepest part of winter, when the snow piles high against the walls and the fort freezes solid, you sometimes lie awake at night, listening to the wind, thinking about the men who died during the last raiding season, wondering if you will survive the next. The darkness seems endless. The sun, when it appears at all, barely rises above the horizon, casting long shadows, providing little warmth. This is a time when the barrier between the living and the dead feels thin, when the old stories of ghosts and spirits seem entirely plausible. The midwinter solstice is marked by a celebration, a feast that breaks the monotony and darkness. This is the time of Yule, a festival that predates Christianity in the north, and will persist even after conversion, absorbed into the Christian calendar, but retaining its pagan roots. Animals are sacrificed to the gods, their blood sprinkled on the idols kept in the sacred groves. The meat from these sacrifices is roasted and shared among the community. Ale brewed earlier in the year and stored in barrels is brought out and consumed in large quantities. The feast lasts for days, with people moving from house to house, sharing food and drink, telling stories, singing songs. It is a time of excess, a deliberate defiance of the scarcity and hardship that characterize the rest of winter. During the feast, oaths are sometimes sworn. A man emboldened by ale and the presence of his peers might swear to accomplish some great deed in the coming year, to lead a successful raid, to avenge a relative, to win the favor of a particular woman. These oaths are taken seriously. To swear an oath and then fail to fulfill it is a mark of shame. The community will remember, and the man's reputation will suffer. So the oaths, though made in a moment of drunken bravado, carry real weight. They bind the future, creating obligations that must be met. You have sworn such oaths yourself in past years, and you have seen others struggle to fulfill theirs. Some succeed, their deeds celebrated in the following year's feast. Others fail, and their failure follows them, a shadow on their honor. The long winter nights are also a time for storytelling. The skalds, the poets who carry the history and mythology of your people in their memories, recite the old tales. They tell of the creation of the world, of Ymir the frost giant, whose body was used to make the earth, his blood the seas, his bones the mountains, his skull the sky. They tell of the gods and their exploits, of Odin's quest for wisdom, of Thor's battles against the giants, of Loki's tricks and betrayals. They tell of heroes from the past, of Sigurd the dragon slayer, of Ragnar Lothbrok and his sons, of the great battles and feuds that shaped the history of the North. These stories are not just entertainment, they are education, teaching values, providing models of behavior, explaining the workings of the world. They connect the present to the past, showing that the struggles you face are part of a larger pattern, that you are not alone in your fears and hopes. As winter slowly gives way to spring, the mood in the longhouse shifts. The days begin to lengthen, imperceptibly at first, then more noticeably. The ice on the fjord starts to break up, great sheets of it cracking and shifting, eventually flowing out to sea. The first migrating birds return, their calls a promise that the world is waking up. People emerge from their houses, blinking in the increasing light, assessing the damage of winter, planning for the work ahead. Fields must be prepared for planting. Animals that survived the winter, thin and weak, need to be coaxed back to health. The ship, pulled up on the shore months ago, must be inspected and repaired. The preparation of the ship for the new raiding season is a communal activity involving not just the crew but much of the village. The hull is examined carefully for any damage, for planks that have cracked or split during the winter freeze, for rivets that have worked loose. Repairs are made using fresh timber, carved to fit precisely, fastened with new iron rivets hammered into place. The ship is recaulked, the gaps between planks sealed with tarred animal hair or wool to keep water out. The sail, taken down and stored, is brought out and inspected. Tiers are mended, worn areas patched. The rigging, the ropes that control the sail, is checked for fraying and weakness. Any rope that seems suspect is replaced. The oars, 30 of them, are checked as well. They have been stored carefully, but wood can warp and crack. Each oar is examined for soundness, tested for balance. A broken oar in the middle of the ocean is more than an inconvenience. It is a threat to the ship's ability to maneuver, to escape danger. The shields that line the sides of the ship are repainted, their bright colors refreshed. The dragon head on the prow, if the ship has one, is sometimes taken down for the winter to preserve it, and now it is remounted, its fierce carved features facing forward, ready to strike fear into enemies. Every aspect of the ship is attended to with care, because your life will depend on its seaworthiness. Your personal equipment also requires attention. Your weapons have been stored through winter, oiled to prevent rust, but they still need work. The edge of your axe has dulled slightly, so you sit with a whetstone and sharpen it. The rhythmic scraping sound filling the air, the metal edge becoming bright and keen. Your spear point is checked for cracks. Your sword, if you have one, is examined along its entire length, looking for any weakness in the blade. Blades can develop hairline cracks that under stress might cause the weapon to break. Better to discover this now, while there is time to have it repaired by a smith, than in the middle of combat. Your mail shirt, if you own one, is cleaned of rust using sand and vinegar, then oiled. The rings must be checked individually, a tedious process, looking for any that have broken or are about to break. A single broken ring can lead to a cascade failure, opening a gap in the armor. Your helmet is polished, its leather lining checked and replaced if necessary. Your shield, which may have taken damage in the previous season's raids, is repaired or replaced entirely. A new shield is made from planks of linden wood, light but strong, bound together with leather and glue. The leather cover stretched tight across the front, the iron boss hammered into place at the center. You paint your design on it, whatever pattern or symbol you have chosen as your personal mark. Beyond the physical preparations, there are also spiritual ones. Sacrifices are made to the gods, asking for their favor in the coming season. A goat or a horse might be killed, its blood offered to Odin, its meat roasted and eaten in a ritual feast. Runes might be carved into the ship, protective symbols meant to ward off evil and ensure safe passage. Some men carry small amulets, Thor's hammer carved from bone or cast in silver, worn on a cord around the neck. These are not just decorations, they are tangible connections to the divine, sources of comfort and strength. Before you leave, you visit the small shrine in the woods where your family has worshipped for generations, a place of ancient stones and gnarled trees. You leave an offering there, a piece of silver or a carved figure, and you ask the spirits of your ancestors to watch over you. The farewells are harder each year. Your children are older now, more aware of what your departure means. They cling to you, asking when you will return. You tell them you will be back before winter, but you do not know if this is true. Your wife stands apart, her face composed, but you can see the fear in her eyes. She has lost friends, neighbors, relatives to the raids. Every spring ships leave the fjord, and every autumn some do not return. She knows that this goodbye might be the last. You embrace her, feeling the strength in her body, the resilience that has allowed her to survive winters and losses and the constant uncertainty of this life. You tell her you will bring back wealth, that you will be careful, that the gods will protect you. She nods, but she does not cry. She is too strong for that, or perhaps too worn down by years of these partings. When the ship finally pushes off from the shore, when the oars bite into the water and the vessel begins to move, you do not look back. To look back is considered unlucky, a sign of doubt and weakness. Instead, you face forward, toward the open sea, toward the unknown. The rhythm of rowing is immediately familiar, your body remembering what your mind had almost forgotten. Around you, your companions are mostly the same as last year, but there are some new faces, young men on their first voyage, their eyes bright with excitement and fear. You remember when you were like that, when everything was new and terrifying and glorious. Now you are a veteran, scarred and experienced, and the young men look to you for guidance, for reassurance. You do not tell them how frightened you still are, how the sea and the violence and the possibility of death never stop being terrifying. You let them believe that you are fearless, because that is what they need to believe. The journey across the North Sea is no easier, the second time, or the third, or the 10th. Each crossing carries its own dangers. The weather is unpredictable, the distances are vast, the emptiness of the ocean is a constant presence. But you are more skilled now at reading the signs, at knowing when to seek shelter, when to push on. You have learned the rhythms of the sea, the patterns of wind and wave. You have learned to live with fear, not to overcome it, but to carry it, to function despite it. This, you have come to realize, is what courage actually means. It is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act in spite of it, to row forward into the unknown, because the alternative is to give up, and giving up is not an option. But perhaps you also wonder if there is another way. Perhaps in the quiet moments you think about the men you have killed, the families you have destroyed, the suffering you have caused. Perhaps you question whether the glory you seek is real, or if it is a lie told by desperate men to justify their violence. Perhaps you think about the Christian monks you raided, and their God who preaches forgiveness and peace, and you wonder if they know something you do not. These thoughts are dangerous, heretical even. You push them away, but they return again and again, a whisper in the dark corners of your mind. The world is changing around you, though you may not fully realize it yet. Christianity is spreading through Scandinavia, brought by missionaries and traders, by kings who see political advantage in conversion. The old gods are being challenged, their temples torn down, their rituals forbidden. In Denmark and Norway, kings are consolidating power, creating centralized states that have no use for independent raiders. The age of the Viking is beginning to end. The raids will continue for decades, even centuries, but they are already becoming less frequent, less successful. The Christian kingdoms are learning to defend themselves, building fortifications, organizing standing armies. The easy plunder is gone. Some Vikings adapt. They settle in the lands they once raided, becoming farmers and merchants, intermarrying with the local populations. The Danelaw in England, Normandy in France, the settlements in Ireland and Scotland. These are the legacy of men like you, men who chose to stay rather than return home. They blend into the societies they once terrorized, their descendants becoming indistinguishable from the people they conquered. Others turn to trade, using their ships and their knowledge of the sea to become merchants rather than raiders. The longships that once carried warriors now carry timber and furs, amber and walrus ivory, trading peacefully with the cities of Europe. But for men like you, men who have spent their lives in violence, adaptation is difficult. You are a warrior, not a farmer or a trader. You do not know how to be anything else, and so you continue, riding out each season, taking what you can, living on the edge of death, until finally, inevitably, your luck runs out. Perhaps it happens in a raid, an enemy blade finding its way through your guard, cutting deep into your chest or belly. Perhaps it happens at sea, a storm overturning the ship, the cold water pulling you down into darkness. Perhaps it happens at home, an infection or an illness that your body, worn out by years of hardship, cannot fight. However it happens, the end is the same. You die, and the world goes on without you. Your family buries you if they can, in a grave mound overlooking the ford. Your weapons are placed beside you, your sword and axe and shield, so that you will have them in the afterlife. Your wife places a small carved figure in your hand, a talisman for luck. Your children stand at the edge of the grave, too young to fully understand what they have lost, but old enough to know that you are gone. A stone is raised to mark the spot, carved with runes that spell out your name and your deeds. For a time, people remember you. They tell stories about the raids you led, the battles you fought, the wealth you brought home, but memory fades. The stone weathers and cracks, the runes become illegible. Within a few generations, no one remembers who you were. The funeral itself is an important ritual, a final ceremony that marks your transition from the world of the living to the world of the dead. If you died at home, your body is washed and dressed in your finest clothes. Your hair and beard are combed. Your face is arranged to look peaceful, though death has already begun its work of decay. You are laid out in your hall for a day and a night, allowing family and friends to pay their respects, to say their goodbyes. People file past, touching your hand, speaking to you as if you could still hear, telling you things they never said while you lived. Your wife sits beside you through the long watch, maintaining her composure, accepting the condolences of others with quiet dignity. On the day of burial, your body is carried to the burial site, a procession winding up the hillside to the place where the grave has been dug. The grave itself is more than just a hole in the ground. It is a chamber, carefully constructed, sometimes lined with wood or stone, large enough to hold not just your body but all the objects you will need in the afterlife. Your weapons are arranged around you, your tools, your personal belongings. A horse might be killed and placed in the grave as well, so that you will have a mount for your journey. Food and drink are left in containers, provision for the long road ahead. The belief is that death is not an end but a journey, and that you will need these things wherever you are going. The mound is then raised over the grave, earth piled high, creating an artificial hill that will remain visible for centuries. This is your monument, the physical marker of your existence. The larger the mound, the more important the person buried within. Great chieftains and kings might have mounds that tower over the landscape, visible for miles, ensuring that their memory endures. Your mound will be more modest, but it is still a statement, a claim on the land, a reminder to future generations that you lived and that you mattered. The stone with its runic inscription is placed at the mound's edge or on top, providing specific information about who you were and what you did. These runestones are not just markers but voices speaking across time, attempting to preserve memory in a world where writing is rare and most knowledge is carried only in human minds. The funeral feast follows the burial, a gathering of family and community to honor the dead and to comfort the living. Food and ale are consumed in large quantities. Stories about you are told, your deeds recounted, your virtues praised, your flaws gently noted. The telling of these stories is itself a ritual, a way of fixing your memory in the collective consciousness, of ensuring that you are not immediately forgotten. Skalds might compose verses about you if your deeds were significant enough, adding you to the oral tradition, making you part of the great tapestry of heroic narrative that defines your culture. To be remembered in song is a form of immortality, perhaps the only kind that is real and lasting. Yet something of you remains. The traces of the Viking age are everywhere, if you know where to look. The place names of England and Ireland, the DNA of populations across the North Atlantic, the ships and weapons and treasures unearthed by archaeologists, all bear witness to the world you inhabited. The great ship burials, like the one at Oseberg, reveal the craftsmanship and artistry of your people. The hoards of silver coins, buried in times of danger and never retrieved, tell stories of wealth and violence. The sagas, written down centuries later, preserve fragments of the culture and values that shaped your life. The physical evidence of your world continues to emerge from the earth and the sea. In the peat bogs of Denmark, archaeologists have discovered longships remarkably preserved by the anaerobic conditions, their clinker-built hulls still showing the marks of the adze, the tool marks of the shipwrights who built them over 1,000 years ago. These ships, when excavated and studied, reveal the sophistication of Viking maritime technology, the flexibility of the hull, the precise angles of the planking, the careful balance of weight and buoyancy, all speak to a deep understanding of the sea and the forces that act upon a vessel. These were not crude boats built by primitive people. They were masterpieces of engineering, the product of generations of accumulated knowledge and refinement. The graves of Viking raiders tell their own stories. In some, the dead were buried with all the accoutrements of their trade, weapons laid carefully at their sides, shields placed over their chests, horses and dogs sacrificed to accompany them into the afterlife. In others, particularly the great ship burials reserved for the wealthy and powerful, entire vessels were dragged inland and turned into tombs. The Oseberg ship, discovered in Norway in 1904, contained the remains of 2 women, along with a wealth of grave goods, ornately carved sledges, a working cart, textiles, and everyday objects that provide an intimate glimpse into Viking life. The Gokstad ship, another famous find, was the burial place of a warrior, his grave filled with weapons, tools, and even small boats for use in the afterlife. These burials were not just about disposing of the dead, they were statements, declarations of wealth and status, preparations for a journey into the unknown. The hoards are perhaps the most poignant remnants of your age. Across Scandinavia, Britain, and Ireland, hundreds of treasure hoards have been discovered. Collections of silver coins, arm rings, ingots, and hack silver, all buried in the ground and never recovered. Some were buried during times of danger, hidden to protect them from raiders or invading armies, their owners killed or displaced before they could return. Others may have been offerings to the gods, votive deposits made at sacred sites. Each hoard is a snapshot of a moment in time, a collection of objects that someone valued enough to hide, to preserve. The silver itself often came from far away, coins minted in Baghdad or Byzantium, evidence of the vast trading networks that connected the Viking world to the Islamic caliphates and the great cities of the East. When you hold one of these coins in your hand today, you hold an object that passed through many hands, that traveled thousands of miles, that represented wealth and power, and the dreams of men long dead. The runestones that dot the Scandinavian landscape are another kind of monument, simpler than the ship burials but no less meaningful. These are standing stones, carved with runic inscriptions that commemorate the dead, record deeds, or mark boundaries. Many were raised by family members to honor those who died on distant raids or trading voyages. The inscriptions are often brief, formulaic. X raised this stone in memory of Y, his son, who went east with the Vikings and died in the land of the Greeks. But behind the simple words lie entire lives, stories of men who left home and never returned, of families who waited and grieved. The runes themselves, the angular letters carved into stone, are a reminder that the Vikings were not illiterate barbarians. They had a writing system, limited in use but sophisticated in its way, employed for record keeping, for magic, for memory. The sagas, written down in Iceland in the 13th and 14th centuries, preserve the oral traditions of the Viking Age. These are long, complex narratives that recount the deeds of kings and heroes, the feuds and alliances, the voyages and settlements. They are not history in the modern sense. They were written centuries after the events they describe, and they mix fact with legend, history with myth. But they capture something essential about the Viking worldview, the values and beliefs that shaped your life. The sagas celebrate courage, loyalty, and cleverness. They show a world where reputation is everything, where a man's honor is worth more than his life, where fate is inescapable but must be met with dignity. They are filled with violence, but also with humor, with complex characters who are neither purely good nor purely evil. They remind us that the Vikings were storytellers as well as warriors, that they valued words as well as deeds. The DNA evidence tells another story, one of movement and mixture. Genetic studies have revealed the extent to which Viking raiders and settlers left their mark on the populations of Europe. In parts of Ireland, Scotland, and northern England, a significant percentage of the population carries Scandinavian genetic markers, evidence of the settlements established during the Viking Age. In Iceland, the genetic makeup of the population reflects both Norse and Celtic ancestry, a legacy of the raiders who brought Irish and Scottish slaves and concubines to their new homeland. Even in places that were only raided, not settled, there are traces of Viking DNA, reminders that the interactions between Vikings and the local populations were not always violent, that there were also marriages, alliances, and exchanges. The archaeological record also reveals the other side of the Viking experience, the everyday life that is often overshadowed by the drama of raids and battles. Excavations of Viking settlements have uncovered farmsteads, workshops, and trading towns that show a people engaged in all the ordinary activities of medieval life. They raised crops and livestock, spun wool and wove cloth, made tools and pottery, traded goods across vast distances. They were skilled metalworkers, producing not just weapons but also jewelry, brooches, and ornaments decorated with intricate interlaced patterns and stylized animal motifs. They were woodcarvers, creating everything from ship figureheads to household utensils. The artifacts they left behind show a society that was not just violent and warlike but also creative, industrious, and connected to the wider world. Modern scholars debate what the Viking Age really was. They argue about whether the raiders were driven by necessity or greed, by population pressure or political ambition. They question the extent of the violence, the motivations of the raiders, the impact on the societies they attacked. Some see the Vikings as brutal savages, a scourge on Christian Europe. Others see them as skilled navigators and traders, as settlers and state builders. The truth, as always, is more complex. You were all of these things. You were a raider and a farmer, a killer and a father, a brave warrior and a frightened man. You were human, shaped by your world, trying to survive in a harsh and unforgiving age. The legacy of the Viking Age is also a legacy of transformation. The raids that terrorized Europe for 2 centuries ultimately contributed to the formation of new states, new cultures, new identities. The Norman conquest of England in 1066 was led by the descendants of Vikings who had settled in northern France. The kingdoms of Scandinavia themselves were forged in the crucible of this era, as local chieftains and warlords consolidated their power and embraced Christianity to gain legitimacy. The Viking Age ended not because the Vikings were defeated, but because they changed, because they became part of the world they had once stood apart from. And what of Valhalla? What of the great hall, where warriors feast and fight for eternity? Did you find it in the end? Or was there only darkness, the silence of oblivion? These are questions that have no answers, at least not in this world. Your beliefs sustained you in life, gave you courage and purpose, but whether they were true, whether there is an afterlife where brave men are rewarded, is something we cannot know. What we do know is that you lived, and that your life, for all its violence and hardship, mattered. You left a mark on the world, however small, however fleeting. The story of the Viking raiders is not a simple tale of heroes or villains. It is a story of human beings struggling to survive, to thrive, to find meaning in a world that offered them few opportunities and fewer comforts. It is a story of courage and cruelty, of ambition and desperation, of the choices people make when they are pushed to the edge. It is a story that still resonates today because the fundamental questions it raises, questions about honor, about violence, about what makes a life worth living, are questions that every generation must answer for itself. Tonight you have walked in the footsteps of a Viking raider. You have felt the cold spray of the North Sea, the weight of an axe in your hand, the fear and exhilaration of a dawn raid. You have lived, for a moment, in a world that no longer exists. A world of longships and shield walls, of gods and fate, of men who went Viking and never returned. The memory of that world has faded, but it has not disappeared. It lives on in the stories we tell, in the ruins we uncover, in the echoes of the past that still speak to us across the centuries. And so our voyage through the past comes to an end. The longship has returned to shore. The crew has dispersed. The stories have been told. What remains is the quiet, the darkness, the slow drift into sleep. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the Viking Age. I hope you have found it both enlightening and restful, a window into a distant time, a different way of life, until our next journey into history. I wish you calm seas and a peaceful night. Rest well and dream of distant shores, of the thunder of oars, of the courage and the cost of those who went Viking so long ago.